WhatsApp in the next hour. WhatsApp 166 text the same number, email studio@manxradio.com, or call 66 13 68. And faster, Mike. Good afternoon, Chief Minister.
Good afternoon, Andy.
First of all, big news as well. Now, where's this big change in the civil service, the most senior civil service role? What's happening now?
So I announced in May that we were going to undertake a number of assessments and reforms to improve performance management across government, particularly in the light of what came out of the Dr. Ranson Tribunal, the evidence that was given at the time. That resulted in me giving that statement to Tynwald, and one of the outcomes is that we've reviewed the role of the Chief Secretary. A report and response to that report from the Council of Ministers will be on the Tynwald Register for Business and will be published on the government website later today. But the essence is we are going to change the role from Chief Secretary to Chief Executive Officer, Isle of Man Government, with the permission of Tynwald, which we propose to do in January. There's three other key elements to that. We are going to put in place a Chief Operating Officer who will be also the head of the Cabinet Office, whose role will be to coordinate and facilitate the Council of Ministers programme across government. We are also going to change the jobs of Chief Executive Officers of departments to just to Chief Officers. And finally, we're going to put in a new Operations Performance Board, which initially will be a subcommittee of the Council of Ministers. I will chair that, and the purpose of that board is to effectively performance management, if you like, or ensure that the Chief Executive Officer in the future of the Isle of Man Government is properly ensuring that operational effectiveness and performance management is being undertaken effectively across government, and that Operations Performance Board will sit there and provide some governance. Because part of this, over the last 20 years or so, actually, there's been a number of reports into the Chief Secretary, and they've all resulted in various bits and pieces of adjustments. But I think one of the fundamentals that's been lacking is an overarching performance governance, effectively, of the Chief Secretary themselves or the Chief Executive themselves, and we're going to put that in place as part of a reform programme.
Now, this is a big shakedown of senior civils. Is this all your own work?
I think when people get a chance to digest the Beeman's report, so what's going to happen next is we'll publish the documentation, the Council of Ministers' response, and as I said, Tynwald will actually have to vote on an amending piece of regulation, which is really about the job title, but it will effectively give the politicians a chance to perhaps express some views around performance management and what they expect to see moving forward. But yet we do need to put in place now some stronger lines of accountability, and effectively this view of performance management. That's not just about chief officers and the chief executive officer as proposed, but this is throughout government. And I think you pick up on some of the fundamentals that have come out of that Dr. Ranson finding, and we've all sort of stood there and sort of stood back a bit and said that this just isn't acceptable. We need to work more effectively and efficiently. Yeah, and some of that aspect has still got to push on. But look, this was one of a number of points that I raised in terms of our response, in terms of what we were going to do to make, first of all, the government a proper professional employer, one where we had effective management systems in place. And part of that is readjusting how this operates at the senior level, and particularly the most senior post.
OK, and that will happen when? It goes before Tynwald?
Well, we will ask Tynwald to change to support the change in regulations. So the role Chief Secretary will go, and Chief Executive Officer Isle of Man Government will come into position, and we will start the recruitment process for a Chief Operating Officer and Chief Executive Officer Isle of Man Government immediately if Tynwald gives permission, and if not, we will recruit for a Chief Secretary. OK.
Could you just bring us up to speed on the Auditor General role and the progress on
that? Well, that's a parliamentary matter. So I think so Tynwald effective, although I am actually part of that process, that recruitment process is underway, and I expect that to be concluded in the new year. But it is important that I differentiate that as a parliamentary matter rather than a government executive government matter, which is where my fundamental role is focused at the moment.
OK, let's get to the lines now. And David, you're live with the Chief Minister. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Hi, Mr. Cannan. And very positive first getting in there. And we look towards seeing that in the future, and I hope you do get that changes. But can I ask you, A couple of simple questions, only two. Regarding your MLCs, the members of the Legislative Council there, and there's some up for reappointment next year. And I just wonder whether we should be considering now, do you need that many? And I'll leave that with you, and you can answer that later. And the other one would be, is regarding your ministers and members of the department, do you think they're active enough in the department to look for savings? I don't see them, getting the pillowcases out of the sheets and shaking them out to see what we can actually do. I don't see there's any discussion coming forward to say, should we be doing this, or should government get involved in that? Should it be somebody else?
Well, I think I'm going to park the MLC's question, David, not because I don't have some personal views, but I think really, again, I think this is a broader political Tynwald discussion. I'll move to the members and the ministers. I think the point is, we're only, eight or so weeks away now from the Treasury Minister having to deliver his budget, the second of this administration, the first for Alex Allinson. And I think what you will find is that he will be looking for more from ministers and from departments in terms of identifying where they can deliver efficiencies. He will be, I think, bringing forward a change of emphasis in terms of the way that the budget is being delivered. But I think from a broader perspective, we know, David, that government finances are under huge pressure. But that's fundamentally because COVID has put a significant dent into the reserves, and then following on from that, the levels of inflation, the implications of that, those costs rising from inflationary across government in a number of areas, impacts of pay rises, do mean now that I think the Treasury Minister will be looking to indicate, a longer term, more sustainable plan once again for government finances. But they've shifted considerably from where we were pre-COVID to a situation that we are now in. Having said that, we've still got to get on and deliver for the people of this island. And we've also brought forward a very ambitious economic strategy. And it's vital that we have a continued focus on building the economy for the island, and that we don't sit back and adopt, I think, this sort of shelter or holding position, because, there's so much going on globally around us at the moment, so many other people trying to find new economic directions. I think we've got to focus. We've set that plan out. We've put that in plan now, the economic plan, into our government's thinking for the short term in terms of the achievements needed for this administration. It's important that we deliver that. But there's only so much money to go around, and ministers and members are going to have to make sure it's spent properly.
Okay. What do you think they should be the political members should be doing, David?
The political members there. The political members have a delegation. The minister is the department, but as we all know, and Mr. Cannan would know that himself, but the political members have delegated functions to do several things, and I don't see them getting chewing the cud and chewing the fat and getting things done. Whether we should be doing that, it B, that we shouldn't get involved in. Give you a prime example of that. Should in this day and age the DOI be a housing authority? My answer to that is definitely no. It gets it into trouble all the time. It's not. There's no equality in that. What's good for one is not good for the other. And then when private landlords have to jump through hoops and bits and pieces like that, and government doesn't, because it's government and it's run by the government, which is wrong. But I'm looking forward to what you're going to do in the future, and I'm sure everybody will be looking forward to seeing what you're doing.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right. Thank you, David. Thanks for that. Just a quick word on that. In terms of political members, when you were Treasury Minister, you had, was it Mr. Henderson, Mr. Shimmins and Mr. Peake. How active were they? What sort of advice did you take from political members?
Well, we had a very active team. I think I was very fortunate, actually, to have a real blend of experience and expertise around me as Treasury Minister. And, I think when you put in people like Bill Shimmins, who had that extensive level of banking and commercial experience, I think they were able to bring a very different perspective to the way that government was tackling a number of issues. And I think the Treasury Board at the time did deliver quite a lot of initiatives. I mean, the SAVE project, for example, is still flickering. There's embers of it. It wasn't hugely successful, but it did focus some minds in terms of where government could be doing things more efficiently and effective. The Manx Development Corporation, which came out of, I suppose, the COVID response, the Economic Recovery Group that was set up, I think very much, and the Brownfield Sites Initiative. I think people like Bill Shimmons and Ralph Peake and Bill Henderson had quite a role in terms of, in the background there, along with other politicians, of course, so people like Laurie Hooper, for example. But it is important. The members within departments do have a role to play. They shouldn't just be in there to make up the numbers. And, I think that focus in terms of their input to policy and cost savings is much needed and really invaluable. And all the department members and ministers really should be challenging the sort of progress in terms of the delivery of their government services.
Okay, Patrick. Hi, Patrick. You're live with the Chief Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Cannan. I would first like to commend you on getting £10 million grant money for brownfield sites passed by Tynwald. So thank you very much for that. But my question to you, as a trainee apprentice engineer, working for a company on island that is subcontracting to Kell Developments in Derby Square. If you take a look around the island, Mr. Cannan, currently Dendara is slowing down in the south of the island and struggling to get planning in the north. Hertford are finishing in Ramsey and are still resolving matters out in Derby. So, by the looks of things, for these companies, the issue is the lack of planning consent over the last few years for new builds. This is going to come back and bite the island now. This is already shown in the lack of housing and inflated house prices. This has got me wondering if I'm even in the right trade and even looking at working across for more opportunity. Secondly, we have so many derelict properties around the island, such as the Trafalgar, the Liverpool Arms, the Brit and Eusons, just to name a few. So my question is, as a people, we are ruled and overruled by planning, who seem to have a strange addiction to dilapidated buildings. Will this ever change, Mr. Cannan, before we lose more young builders who have lost faith in the island and decide to go to the UK?
Well, thanks very much, Patrick. They're great questions and hugely relevant at the moment. As you know, we have set regeneration, brownfield sites really at the top of our agenda. We've just got this island infrastructure scheme through now, as you say, which has up to £10 million. So the point of that is to incentivise those developers, stroke landowners who are sitting on very difficult to develop brownfield sites to come forward now with their project schemes. And if they're the right schemes and they're attractive to government, then we can, I hope, get those facilitated and start to get these brownfield sites. And of course, part of that is attracting people to live in the towns, which will add to the sustainability and vibrancy of the town centre.
Could you just explain why this £10 million isn't just giving a lot of money to rich developers anyway?
Absolutely. I'll come back to that. The other very important part here, Patrick, is the Manx Development Corporation. Now, I know that's currently only got sort of the Nobles Hospital as an example, but I can promise you there's some really exciting projects coming through which will give some real opportunities to the building trade. And in the next 6 to 12 months, I believe that you're going to be hugely impressed with the plans and opportunities for young men and women like yourself that will have in terms of the scale and type of developments that we are seeking to be built. And we will open up the Brownfield Site Scheme, which, by the way, will run an initial round of funding in terms of Douglas, I expect, but will open up to other areas around the island. And very quickly, Andy, just to answer your question, and I'm sorry, I've got one more point to add to Patrick, because he did raise a number of issues there. There's a number of ways you can try and tackle this problem. But look, we've been trying to tackle this, I would suggest, for 20 plus years in many ways. And a lot of government plans and promises have just never come to fruition for whatever reason. This scheme, alongside the Manx Development Corporation, I believe is fairly simplistic in its approach and will give us the very best opportunity for the least public sector taxpayer investment to get things moving and to bring great deal of future benefits to our town environment, but also our general economic environment. And finally, Patrick, very quickly, There is, as I understand it, some 800 house unit approvals already been given by planning for future bills. So I hear what you're saying about maybe some areas where they're struggling to get planning through. We're going to continue to look at that. We've got planning reforms on. We've got a major applications process now. So I think if if all those houses were built from that 800 or so that have planning application at the moment, I think, and you see some of the developments that you refer to, including Derby, which I'm really excited about, and we'll get some more details on that, I'm sure, in the near future. If all this comes together, there's going to be some really exciting opportunities, and you and your colleagues, particularly for you and in your sort of trainee and apprenticeship position, I hope we'll have some real confidence that there's going to be long-term sort of job security and scale and design opportunities that you'll want to get your teeth into.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Could I add one more point?
Okay. Very quickly, if you would.
Very, very quickly, yes. So just going back to what you said, Mr. Cannan, about wanting to redevelop buildings and bring more housing into Douglas. So why are we having such an issue, and why are other developers having issues developing buildings in Douglas? For example, we'll take Newsons. Newsons is going to bring new housing into Douglas. It's one of the first things you see when tourists get off the boat and they just see a big dilapidated building. So if that's bringing housing and also bringing commercial units, which we do need on the island to boost the infrastructure and boost the tourism that we all want, why is there such an issue with getting things like that through planning? That's where the issue with the planning department is.
I think, Patrick, very quickly, and I won't refer to any specific schemes. I'm sure you'll understand why I'm trying not to refer to that. But look, there is always these conflicts within the planning system between the built environment, what is heritage, and what is environmental requirements, and all have a role to play, versus, of course, what we must do, I believe, to ensure that we have a proper sustainable future, a proper economic future. And I think it is right that we get the balance right. And I think at the issue, and there's been a number of building applications and sites over the years where I think the aspects that you're talking about have come into conflict. And it's really about getting the balance right. That's why, for example, we've set up this major applications process, and why we are continuing to look at the planning process, if you like, in terms of what it needs to do to be sort of modern and shipshape, and we could get quicker decisions through. But part of that is developers and the planning authorities working more closely and effectively at the beginning, and are hoping that some of these changes will make a difference in terms of the way these sites, particularly these difficult sites, which have caused controversy in the past, are viewed.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. 26 minutes past 12, and lots of people want to get through. Here's Julian. You're live with the Chief Minister, Julian.
Hi, Andy, and good afternoon, Chief Minister.
Good afternoon, Julian.
I've got two short questions and perhaps a snippet of good news if we have time. Several government officials and ministers, including yourself, recently attended a virtual presentation on agricultural best practice by Professor Miles Allen, a climate computer modeller who was invited to speak by the Manx National Farmers Union President Ian Parsons. And Professor Allen is a key author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's Net Zero Policy documents, and is also a senior agenda contributor to the World Economic Forum. Just wondering, why is the Isle of Man government listening only to pressure groups like the IPCC and the World Economic Forum, neither of which are an elected above-ground political party?
I don't think that we're just listening to pressure groups, but we are pushing forward internationally recognised targets. I think it's important that within this whole discussion, if you like, about the future, about our future sustainability, about climate change, that one listens to a wide variety of opinions. I don't think one should just close your mind off just because people have very passionate views. But I like to say, Julian, that this isn't about climate change activism. It should be about climate change pragmatism, and we need to be pragmatic about how we approach things. And I agree. There's some really radical views out there that, frankly, just aren't practical. But that doesn't mean to say that as ministers or members of the public, we shouldn't try to understand people's viewpoints as we try to take the island forward, and we have to take ourselves forward. I think, I'm absolutely believe that a failure to do so in terms of addressing this challenge and playing our role in it could substantially, actually, if nothing else, just damage the island's economy. A lot of businesses are now looking to understand what governments are doing around the world in terms of having good, strong environmental and sustainability goals, and we need to be with the international community in that respect, if not towards the front of it, because I think overcoming challenges around, for example, fossil fuels and providing renewable energy will be absolutely vital, both for our energy security as humans, but also on a more sort of micro level in terms of our future economic security and what it means for the Isle of Man and businesses and job opportunities.
Okay, Julian?
Well, Professor Allen's policy documents have directly influenced, for example, the Netherlands, where they're pretty much closing down all their farms, over 3,000 of them, and they're the second largest producer of food in the world. How can I put this? It has the feeling of sort of the blood clinic inviting Dracula for a webinar in some ways. I don't mean to be flippant, but you know what I mean. I mean, this chap it seems New Zealand's going through the same turmoil. Do you not feel that there might be some... I mean, are you actually asking anybody else about this, or is this the IPCC's Professor Allen? Is it him only that you're addressing, or is there anyone else?
Well, first of all, I mean, it was the Manx NFU that invited this.
Sorry, I was just going to make that point. This wasn't a government event. I was merely invited to attend, and as a strong supporter of Manx agriculture, as you would expect, coming from a rural constituency, I merely went along to understand what was being said and being discussed.
Okay, my second question. Andrew Bridgen is a UK Member of Parliament, and he was speaking in the House of Commons on Tuesday and is calling for an immediate stop for all COVID vaccines due to an alarming number of severe adverse events being reported. In fact, to the yellow card system, the last 2 years' worth has been more than all the vaccine adverse reports put together for the last 40 years. Will you be looking into that, maybe investigating Andrew Bridgen's information and assertions?
Yeah, well, I'm aware of what was said, and in fact, I think I saw a news clip on social media in terms of Mr. Bridgen's discussion points in Parliament. I mean, just accepting at face value what he said, then clearly some explanation is needed. I'm aware, of course, there have been these increases, but look, they could be attributed to a number of other reasons, particularly on the back of the whole COVID, if you like, pandemic. And I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I think it's right that members of Parliament are asking questions about extreme levels, fluctuating levels of whether it's healthcare, education, whatever the alarm bell is sounding. But look, we trust very much our medical profession. We know that actually that the COVID pandemic was providing a huge challenge to public health, that people were dying, and those vaccines, frankly, I believe prevented a huge amount of damage being done to our society. And we're going to continue, unless otherwise, to work with the medical professionals and take the proper professional advice from the medics, and trust in the effectiveness of vaccine rollout.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Julian.
All right, thanks, Andy, and all the best for Christmas, Chief Minister.
Thank you, Julian. Andy. Thank you.
Okay, good to hear from you. This is a question in from Derek, and it concerns Kroger Gas. And it just says, we haven't heard much from Kroger Gas lately. I understand they're going to be drilling, but is it true that Kroger Gas if they don't get permission from the Isle of Man, could merely turn the tap the other way and sell it to the UK grid, to the UK infrastructure, and we wouldn't get the VAT.
Well, Kroger have been granted respective permissions to get on and carry out their exploration, and they've been given an agreement by which, providing they undertake certain actions within certain timescales and demonstrate certain objectives are met, then they will be able to get on and drill for gas. Where that gas is ultimately lands up, I think, is yet to be decided. Yeah. But the Isle of Man, if it happens, then the Isle of Man will get its relevant share of the financial taxation or VAT revenue that comes from any delivery of gas to wherever that is.
So if it came ashore around Mackle, presumably we get a lot more money, because then it will be sent over to Peel and it will be then sold on to the Irish through the gas system up there. But and you were talking about our international reputation regarding agriculture and the fact that we know there are international companies based up and down Athol Street and elsewhere who report around the world to head offices, and our green credentials matter to those international businesses. Can we handle bringing gas onto the Isle of Man shore?
Well, I think we've all recognised that gas is a transition fuel. And listen, I mean, we've set out our climate change plans in terms of the targets. We've also set out the basis in terms of how we believe that's going to be achieved, with the establishment, certainly, of this base interconnector between the Isle of Man and the UK. And we've also started our journey now by this Council of Ministers saying by 2026 we must be producing at least 20 megawatts of renewable energy on island. And we've still got a big piece of work to do, I believe, around clearly setting out the vision for renewable energy provision on the Isle of Man. And we need to do that because I think we need to give investors certainty, and we need to understand ourselves what it looks like. But we know, Andy, even in this age, and we've got big plans we can see coming forward from the UK about continued offshore wind farm expansion. And by the way, we are looking very closely about what both the impacts of that, but how we can be part of this offshore wind story as well in the future. And indeed, that could could give us some supply options into the Isle of Man. But nevertheless, there are still unsolved questions that need to be resolved in terms of what happens, as it has been happening for the last week, when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And frankly, we've still got to be in a position to make sure we've got a base energy supply. And I think this question of base energy still needs to be answered. Yes, putting in the interconnector is one answer, and I think should be an option, an action for this government to make sure that we have got that absolute critical base energy supply. But there are still many questions as this whole programme develops through, in terms of what that might look like in the future. So gas and this gas field was always viewed as a transition from the information we knew at that time of acceding and agreeing to the request. It was simply, an argument that we felt provided us with a very simple sort of, yes, we should go ahead with this because we don't fully understand that at the moment, but we know that gas is a transition fuel, and even if it isn't for us, it will help people in terms of their transition plans and provide that potential baseload option if it can be extracted.
OK, the Chief Minister's live on Mannin Line. Alfred Cannan, MHK, live for the next 24 minutes on Manx Radio.
Concerned, confused or curious about climate change? Want to do your part? Then visit netzeromatrix.com, helping businesses and individuals understand the net zero targets that government has set, how they'll be achieved and what impact it will have upon us. Plus, get practical advice and tips for saving energy, the options available for switching to renewable energy technologies, and much more. We all need to do what we can. So visit netzeromatrix.com and join us.
I've bought all the Christmas presents, the freezer's stocked up, and I've got the decorations out the loft.
Sit down, my love. You like a cup of tea?
Jeffrey, have you had a blow to the head?
No, my dear. 'Tis a season of goodwill. I just wanted to show my appreciation.
Oh, Jeffrey, I do love you.
And I love you as well. Plus our new Spectrum windows.
A happy Christmas to all our satisfied customers and new customers to come from Spectrum Windows. Oh, and Jeffrey and the missus.
Happy Christmas, everyone!
Registration is now open for the Buchan School and King William's College. Come and discover how your child can enjoy the perfect start at the Buchan and then benefit from academic excellence to achieve their full potential at King William's College. With average class sizes of 13, superb extracurricular activities and individual support, it's an outstanding island education for your child's global future. So call 820-110 to arrange your visit.
Cinnamon, mulled wine, ginger, orange, ground coffee and chocolate. The smells of Christmas. And at Sorrel, the island's first custom perfumery, we've put them all into our hand-poured soy wax Christmas candles. Part of the range of beautifully packaged handmade perfumes, aftershaves and home fragrances, perfect for gifts. Call in at Church Road, Port Erin or visit sorrel.im. Sorrel, the scent of the island this Christmas.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by netzeromatrix.com. the Isle of Man's main net zero progress website.
21 minutes before 1. And hi, David, you're live with the Chief Minister.
Oh, good afternoon, gentlemen. As we come to the end of the autumn term in our secondary schools, I'm wondering if Mr. Cannan could take this opportunity on the Mannin Line to send out two clear messages. One is to those local members of the NASUWT who, I have to say, goaded by provocateurs from across and within our own Manx Labour Party, continue to persist in their militant actions in pursuit of their unreasonable, unaffordable and totally, quite frankly, unrealistic pay demands, and also really send a message to the wider electorate, many of whom are totally on side with those teachers in the less militant unions who have accepted what has been a very generous pay award, and give assurance to the public that bully boy tactics from this one teaching union will just not prevail.
Well, I'm delighted to be able to support your message, David, because I think the strike action, this disruptive 1-2 day strike action, I feel is really unjustified, and the reasons for that is because we've made clear our commitments to address funding in education, and in fact we've now raised the base starting point, raised teacher salary to £36,000. We scrapped the two lowest grades. And over the last 2 or so years, teachers have had between sort of 10 to 18% pay rises, depending on their grades. And we've made some real progress. And you're right, we can't afford straight payments of 30% as demanded by the NASUWT. I'm really on side with everybody in the teaching profession that we need to improve terms and conditions. But we've made so many steps forward that it's just not reasonable from the NASUWT at the moment to adopt the position that they are. And frankly, if we're going to continue on with this persistent, damaging 1-2 day disruptive work to rule type environment, then the government is going to have to consider what legislation is going to be necessary to protect the future education of our children, because it's getting very, very damaging after 2 years of COVID disruptions. And ongoing industrial action, when a government's made so many steps forward, it's completely unreasonable. And I think it is important that the public knows that we haven't just been sitting twiddling our thumbs, that we have got a review of education funding, but more importantly, substantial progress has been made with teachers' pay. And let me also just be clear, I think, in terms of my own view. I want to have well-paid, happy teachers who are delivering the best education possible to our children. And I don't just mean what they're doing actively in terms of the curriculum, but the broader educational environment in which children are learning and developing as human beings. And part of our commitments to achieving that, David, was to bring forward, and we are going to make clearer this sort of year, if you like, in terms of the next 12 months, what this quality assurance scheme that we've promised for our schools looks like now, and what that will mean for giving everybody confidence that our education system and our schools are meeting the levels of expectation that, quite rightly, parents across the island are looking for.
David?
Yeah, no, I fully agree, Mr. Cannan. I'm a parent. I've got a daughter in the lower sixth form now. One just went to university in September of this year. And of course, they've experienced either action, short strike action, or obviously the lockdowns. And so we had very variable quality of learning during that. So as a profession, I think the teachers at the moment have been awarded a very, very generous settlement. And there is more work to be done. As Mr. Cannan said, it's not going to be fixed overnight. But I would encourage them, actually, if they do persist in this. And I think it's, General Geraldine has, got her troops marshalled, and she's hell-bent on confrontation as far as I can see it. There doesn't seem to be much give at all from the union side. Perhaps they're not getting the message out across. But everyone is in this situation together. It's a hard economic situation. I don't get charged any more or less at the checkout in Tesco's, depending on my profession. We all have the cost of living crisis to face. And quite frankly, I think, as you alluded to there, Mr. Cannan, perhaps a change in legislation for the employment conditions for a no-strike clause, so to speak, is the way ahead.
David, I think you raised some the relevant point, actually, in all this. And, I personally think that teachers have actually been focused on and looked after more, actually, than any other body across the public sector. But basically, every single person in our community has been impacted by this disparity in terms of living costs versus wages. And this has been going on, actually, almost since 2008. And when Geraldine O'Neill talks about this 30% and benchmarking it back, well, she may be correct. But that's the same for absolutely everybody. And our job from a public sector perspective is, yes, we have to have a responsibility. We also recognise that people in the private sector who we have to facilitate and look after as well, in terms of making sure we've got the employment opportunities and driving forward the economy, are also in exactly the same position. And I know some progress is being made, but it's extremely difficult in this economic environment, and there has to be a sense of proportionalism and realism. And frankly, at the moment, the NAS UWT are not demonstrating that.
Okay, all right. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. And on that same note, just no comment required, but Ian from Port St Mary dropped a note in just to say, my wife and I fear we're being held to ransom by the teaching unions because we have to organise childcare when the children aren't at school. And I'm sure lots of other parents feel that way. OK, Juan. Hi, Juan. You're live with Alfred Cannan, MHK.
Hey, good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Alf.
Good afternoon, Juan.
Alf, we spoke quite a few times. I think about a year ago, I spoke to you about suicides and mental health issue. I spoke to you at the Villa Marina conference, and there's quite a few issues. You have to forgive me for talking at you a little bit here, but there is a question at the end of it. There used to be a joke years ago about how do you know when a politician's lying? His lips are moving, and I have to doubt some of the narrative that's coming from government in the last 2.5 years. You just spoke there about the vaccination. Now, I know there's over 100 people on a vaccination injuries list on the Isle of Man, and they keep putting points to you. And you went on there about closing your mind off about different things. And I still find it bizarre that this government is still promoting the use of vaccinations with children and pregnant women, considering the amount of information that's now coming out from Pfizer and different places, which they've tried to withhold in the European court, and they said that they knew that this would not stop transmission. And moving on from that, I've spoke to Claire Barber recently about farming, and just following on from what Julian said about Miles Allen and his connection with the World Economic Forum, what's distinctively happening in the Netherlands. And I asked the question of what government was invested in keeping farming on the island, arable farming, and keeping farming going. Because in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's, our self-sustainability in the future with food and energy is going to be a very, very key thing. No matter where you travel and what deals you do in South Africa or Brazil, wherever you go, our biggest thing is a sustainability. And I think that you seem to be sailing farming down the river for this climate change agenda, which is full of maybes, possiblies, and could-bes.
Okay, all right. June, we're on a bit of a timetable, but just vaccinations and farming.
Well, I think I've already sort of made the point about the vaccine, our reliance on the professionals and public health to guide us properly. In terms of farming, look, we are all on quite a transitional journey at the moment when it comes to climate change. I've talked about the importance of climate change pragmatism. I've talked about ensuring the long-term sort of sustainability of the island, and part of that is very much about having some food security and making sure that we do have an industry that can provide us in the toughest of times. And let's not get complacent about things, because we've seen with Ukraine and we've seen with COVID how quickly supply chains can be impacted in a variety of ways, and how quickly food can start to diminish on our shelves when you're reliant on other people. So we've got to have an industry on the island that is strong enough and stable enough to sustain us in absolute crisis. But also, farming, agriculture, it's a very, very hard industry at the moment. There's huge pressures, and there's a number of reasons for that, including the dominance and the way that the big supermarkets are putting so much cost pressure on consumers, and of course the ability of consumers themselves to pay the prices that you get for organic food. And of course I encourage everybody to shop locally and to look for the very best in Manx produce. But I also accept that large proportions of the community at the moment are just looking to be able to pay for the lowest prices so that they can actually feed themselves and sustain themselves. So it's really quite a complex situation. And of course, farming has got a huge role to play, given the significance of the landmass under sort of agricultural control, if you like, in terms of climate change. And there could be huge opportunities for farming as well, in terms of being able to make ends meet with their farms, both in the supply of the traditional arable and meat industry, but also potentially playing a part in future energy provision. So, look, there's a lot to explore at the moment, but we're absolutely not going to sell agriculture down the river. I think we're working with agriculture as closely as possible so that they can understand how they can play a role effectively in climate change and in efficient land management, but also part of it absolutely is making sure that we have an agricultural industry that, one, is meeting the very basic needs of society, which is food, but also is in itself has some sort of economic future, because it's really tough on the farms at the moment.
Okay, all right, June, thanks for that. We have to press on because we've got another call in just a moment.
Crossroads, Isle of Man, putting carers first. Crossroads have been providing services to local carers and people with care needs for over 30 years. Support our valuable work by buying your Christmas cards and calendars from Crossroads. Available now. You'll find a great range to choose from at quirky.im or at the Crossroads shops. Crossroads, Isle of Man, putting carers first. Our
Subway festive turkey stack sub is filled with joy and big on flavour. Juicy sliced turkey breast, maple smoked streaky bacon, crispy hash browns and fresh veggies. Built right in front of you, just how you like it. Go footlong and you'll get a free hot or fountain drink. New this year, dip your sub into our special recipe gravy. Try our pigs in blankets and limited edition sticky toffee pudding cookies. Feed your festive spirit at Subway in ShopRite, Peel and Port Erin.
When did you last visit Currach's Wildlife Park? There's so much to see, from monkeys and meerkats to red pandas and penguins. They have a great play area for kids, and did you know adults come here on their own? They love it as much as us. There's the Mangrove Cafe, and Mum says the membership's great value. Gran gave it as a gift, and I adopted a gibbon. Currach's Wildlife Park, open from 9:30 Thursday to Sunday, and every day in the school holidays. Follow them on Facebook and see what's on.
Oh, thank goodness for Island Fuels. I was here on my own with the baby when we ran out of heating oil. It was getting pretty chilly. I called Island Fuels and explained our situation. And you know what? They swapped round a couple of non-urgent deliveries and slotted us in. And the delivery driver was so nice, as our tank is a bit tricky to get to. And now we're toasty warm again, aren't we?
For plenty in the tank, with reliable fuel delivery and friendly service, call Island Fuels today on 247 645.
The Mannin Line, brought to you by NetZeroMatrix.com. Helping Isle of Man companies and citizens to understand net zero targets and a green future.
Live today with the Chief Minister Alfred Cannan, MHK, and a message for Mr. Cannan regarding renewable energy. Will the Isle of Man be investing in offshore wind energy or other forms of renewables in the coming years? Now, the main power station will be reaching its life expectancy in just over a decade. Is there a plan for where our energy is going to come from? And we will be looking towards net zero power. That's from Ryan.
Yeah, Andy, I think I've already really covered that, but that interconnector was putting in this new connection pipeline, if you like, between the Isle of Man and the UK will give us an enhanced power source from a net zero perspective, but also
when will the new interconnector
well,
be?
We've got to get it in. We're targeting, we've set targets for 2030 in terms of reduction, a significant reduction in carbon emissions. The power station is really a fundamental part of that. And of course, we've done the 20 megawatts renewables, and you're talking about offshore. Yes, we've been sitting on this sort of offshore piece actually for some time now. I can tell you we're working really hard to understand how to bring that to fruition and play a part in terms of delivering offshore renewable energy, which will add to the whole climate change programme, but also potentially give us some much needed additional revenue into the Treasury as well.
Okay, Terry dropped a note in just to say, Mr. Cannan used to be Treasury Minister. Does the old Treasury Minister ever advise the current Treasury Minister what to do?
The current Treasury Minister is a strong-minded individual, as you would expect from any Treasury Minister. Look, but also it's important that there's effective and proper lines of communication. We chat regularly, and as I said, in 8 weeks' time or so, and he's working really hard at it at the moment. The Treasury Minister has to deliver his budget. So yes, there's a lot of communication going on.
Okay, now I know we've put an awful lot of public money into helping people, and the Winter Help Advice line, I think, is 686262, 686262. Are you a caring government?
Yeah, we've put together this, I think the Community Warm Spaces Fund, very quickly, Andy. It's okay, it's £100,000, but open to applications from charities, from anybody in the third sector, or even local authorities to offer these warm spaces for people. We've just gone through this cold snap. I know £50,000 been awarded already. I know various groups are starting to make use of it, but it really is I think a demonstration of part of our awareness of the fact that particularly this winter with the cost of energy, people are looking for additional ways to save money. But actually this Warm Spaces Fund and the fact that it's already up and running is an example about our caringness. And of course, this year the Treasury have delivered £12 million in additional support to families, to those on certain types of benefits. The Treasury Minister's just announced in January that pensioners will get an additional £300 payment to help them with their heating and fuel and cost of living crisis. That'll be up to £17 million we've delivered out to the community. But actually, as well as protecting those individuals and families, it will also add some cash benefit to the general economy, and some of that money will have filtered its way through to shops and bars and restaurants and hospitality. So, and actually, of course, finally, we've suppressed those electricity prices as well as another step to help our community through the toughest of times.
Okay, thanks for being with us. Have a Merry Christmas.
And Andy, a very quick Happy Christmas and successful New Year to everybody across the island.
Okay, the Chief Minister has just been on Mannin Line.
Merry Christmas from everyone at Victoria Road Primary School in Castletown.
The last thing you need this winter is your boiler breaking down. So, avoid unexpected costs with Homeplan cover from Isle of Man Energy. Homeplan can cover you for almost every eventuality, including repairs and parts. And there's Home